understand the viewpoint of the motorcade, of the school book depository, and of the grassy knoll. Larry Ray Harris is here. As we said, he's an expert on where the witnesses were here that day in Dealey Plaza. So we're going to ask him to tell us, as we start up here in this part of the street, who exactly was standing in this area, and what significance did they find in the motorcade as far as shots? What did they hear? What did they see, Larry?
Thank you. How many? Can I ask how many of you are here are visiting Dallas or not from Dallas? Okay, thank you. We're waiting for some of the eyewitnesses to arrive here. They're being brought over in shuttles, and once they're in place, they will share with you their observations of what they saw, what they heard. This is Dealey Plaza. For those of you who are out of town, maybe be here for the first time, the red building back here behind us is the old Dallas County Courthouse. This building with the red brick and the bars on the windows is the old Criminal Courts building. Here at the corner of Elm and Houston, the cream-colored building is the old Dallas County Records building. Back here, this orange brick building on the other corner, 501 Elm Place, at that time was the Dow Tex building. And then, of course, over here on the other corner is the old original Texas School Book Depository. Back here on the north is the pergola and the area further on down that is now known around the world as the Grassy Knoll. And then straight ahead at the foot of Elm Street is the triple underpass. The motorcade, as it came down Main Street to the center of downtown Dallas, that will be the street over here between the old Criminal Courts building and this Criminal Courts building. And the motorcade made a right turn onto Houston Street, which runs here, and then made a very sharp left turn onto Elm Street. It was a very sharp turn. The limousine was quite long, and the car came almost to a stop as it made the sharp turn. And as it was coming out of the turn, proceeding down Elm Street, it was going about 11 miles an hour. Phil Willis and his wife and daughter were scheduled to be here with us today. They are unable to join us because they were involved in an automobile accident earlier this week, and there were some injuries, and we wish them a speedy recovery. But Phil Willis was taking photographs. He was standing up in this area and took a very famous series of slides which show the location of the limousine when the shooting broke out. It shows the Grassy Knoll area in the background. There are figures that have been photographically enhanced and concluded to be human figures moving around. Up there behind the wall, figures, one figure in particular disappears between two particular snapshots taken by Mr. Willis. This is going to be difficult to do with this crowd, but we're going to try to just proceed down Elm Street and kind of retrace the movement of the car. And as we get to various spots where eyewitnesses were standing, I will hand the microphone over to them, and they will share with you their observations of what they saw or heard. It is true that a majority of the eyewitness and ear witnesses in Dealey Plaza, those who were asked to voice an opinion as to the origin of the shots, a majority did state that one or more shots did originate up ahead of the limousine from the area up there that at that time was variously referred to as the garden area or the knoll area or the wall area. One woman was running and shouting, "They're shooting the president from the bushes." And that all alludes to that area up there where there's a retaining wall, a wooden picket fence, and shrubbery. One of the most controversial eyewitnesses relied on by the Warren Commission was a construction worker named Howard Brennan. And Mr. Brennan was sitting on this wall up here around the pool. There's no one sitting up there right now, but he was actually sitting up there. And he initially is claimed to have identified Lee Harvey Oswald as the gunman in the 6th floor. Later it emerged that the Warren Commission was quite skeptical of Mr. Brennan's account. Ultimately, behind the scenes, he had pretty much discredited himself with the commission and their staff. Nonetheless, they did utilize his testimony publicly because he was at least willing to state that it was Lee Harvey Oswald in the window. I think if you will, as you're standing around and glancing up at that window and you see the actual view just from ground level, I think most of you would agree that it would be very difficult for anyone to make a positive identification of anyone up in that window, and certainly a stranger whom he had never seen before. I just think the lighting and the nature of the window and the distance is such that no one could make a positive identification of Lee Oswald as a gunman from ground level.
Larry, I think it's important to note, too, that Howard Brennan did say that when the shots fired that killed President Kennedy, he was looking up at the window and was able to identify the gunman, when in fact you look at the Zapruder film and you look at those frames when President Kennedy was shot, Howard Brennan was facing the president and the motorcade and not looking up there.
He also later said he had a smirk on his face.
And Oliver Stone was here in 1991 recreating the motorcade and the assassination. He had the trees and the shrubbery trimmed back, the signs removed, and for the purposes of filming the movie, at some point the sign was removed, and there were indications suggesting that the sign had either been struck by a bullet or a ricocheting bullet or a bullet fragment. And that led to conjecture that the sign was taken down for some sort of evidence purposes. But it's just not clear exactly when the sign was actually removed. I'm not sure it was removed within 24 hours of the assassination. We've got so many people in here, I can't quite see my landmarks, but I'm going to do the best I can. As I told you, the limousine was going about 11 miles per hour coming out of the turn. And once they reached about this point, lined up with me, is when the first volley of shots, or the first shot, was fired. Some people in the crowd thought it was a firecracker. Others thought that possibly they were firing a 21-gun salute for the president. Some people in the crowd did not realize at first what was happening, but the first shot or volley of shots occurred as the limousine reached this area right in here to my front. And there is evidence to suggest that one of the shots, possibly the first shot, ricocheted. There is a lot of testimony and statements and affidavits of people seeing something bounce off the pavement. We do know that one shot at least missed and struck a bystander named James Tague. There is also a belief among many of the researchers that the first shot struck the president in the back. Also that the shot, or a shot, may have come from the Grassy Knoll area and struck the president in the throat. And the contemporaneous record reveals that all of the doctors at Parkland Hospital who observed the wound in President Kennedy's throat when he was first brought in, all were under the impression that it was a small, neat wound of entry. You're not going to find, if you've read any at all on the assassination, you know that there is all kinds of recreations and scenarios and theories and recreations of where the shots originated, how many were fired, the location of the gunman. A lot of disagreement over the number of shots and how many. I've heard as many as 9 shots proposed as the total number of shots fired in the plaza, with some being almost simultaneous, so that some people only heard maybe 3 or 4 shots, but anywhere from 3 shots to 4 shots up to 9 shots. You can take your pick. You know, there's evidence to support everything. When Congress reopened the investigation in the 1970s, they did do a very sophisticated acoustical analysis here in Dealey Plaza using a Dallas police radio dictabelt, which contained the actual police radio transmissions that day. And using state-of-the-art technology that existed in the 70s, the House Select Committee on Assassinations concluded that a fourth shot was fired from the grassy knoll. They concluded the shot missed.
As he came down, there was some noises. I assumed that they were bullets. I don't know. Shots, I'm not sure. But as he got just past me, there was a loud ba-boom, and the president went violently back against the seat. It looked as though someone had thrown a bucket of blood out the back of his head. And I was frozen and suspended in time. Did not go to work Friday night. I did not go to work Saturday night. And of course I did not go to work Sunday night. Because as you know, Sunday morning, my friend Jack Ruby went into the basement of the police department, and he blew away a man whom he had introduced to me 2 to 3 weeks prior as his friend, Lee Harvey Oswald, or he didn't say Harvey, he said Lee Oswald, with the CIA. At 17 years old, I did not know what the CIA was. I was not impressed. And I must be honest, I'm still not sure what the CIA is. And I'm still not impressed. I was very frightened. I was very confused, because then I'm hearing reports that the president was shot from the back of the head. Now, I know I'm blonde. I know that I'm dumb. But I'm going to tell you what, I'm not stupid. And I know from going hunting with my brother, Eugene Oliver, that when something is shot, the body movement goes in the direction of the trajectory of the bullet. My president went violently backwards. He never went forward until Jackie pulled him forward, pushed him down, and she climbed over the back to get whatever it was on the back of the trunk, which I believe to be brain matter.